The temperature read -42 when I pulled my rig onto the ice road crossing. Lake Winnipeg. February in northern Manitoba meant the lake had been frozen solid for months, thick enough to support loaded semis making the run between isolated communities. I'd driven this route dozens of times, but something felt different that night. My name's Jacob Reimer, and I'd been hauling freight up north for 15 years. The ice road paid triple the normal rate, but most drivers wouldn't touch it. One wrong move, one weak spot in the ice, and you'd punch through into black water that would kill you in minutes. Around midnight, my CB radio crackled to life. A voice, distorted and breaking up, called for help. The coordinates he gave were maybe 10 miles ahead. Protocol said, "Don't stop on the ice road, keep your momentum, keep moving." But the voice sounded desperate, panicked. I made the decision I'd regret for the rest of my life. I found the truck 20 minutes later. It sat at an odd angle, steam rising from the hood, headlights cutting through the blowing snow. I pulled up cautiously, scanning for cracks in the ice. Everything looked solid. The other rig was a white Peterbilt older model, completely unfamiliar. I grabbed my flashlight and climbed down. The wind hit me like a physical force, stealing the breath from my lungs. The cold was so intense it made my teeth ache. I approached the other truck, calling out. No response. The driver's door hung open. Inside, the cab was empty, but the engine was still running, heat blasting. A thermos of coffee sat in the cup holder, still steaming. The driver's logbook lay open on the seat. I picked it up, shining my light on the pages. The last entry was dated February 14th, 1987. 21 years ago. My hands started shaking, and not from the cold. I backed away from the truck, and that's when I noticed the tracks. Footprints in the snow, leading away from the Peterbilt. But they weren't normal. They were spaced too far apart, like whatever made them had an impossibly long stride. I followed them without thinking, some stupid impulse overriding common sense. The prints led straight out onto the lake, away from the road. After maybe 100 yards, they just stopped. Not gradually, they ended mid-stride, like whatever made them had simply vanished into the air. That's when I heard the ice. Not cracking singing. A high, crystalline sound that seemed to come from below, from the lake itself. It rose and fell in pitch, almost melodic. Beautiful and utterly wrong. I stood frozen, listening as the sound grew louder, surrounded me. The ice beneath my feet began to glow. A pale blue-green phosphorescence spreading out in a circle, growing brighter. Through the ice I could see shapes moving in the water below. Large shapes, circling. I ran. Behind me, the singing grew louder, angry. The ice groaned and popped. I could hear water sloshing, the sound of the lake waking up. My lungs burned from the cold air, but I didn't stop until I reached my truck. I threw it in gear and accelerated, the big diesel engine roaring. In my mirrors, I saw the glowing circle spreading, following me. The abandoned Peterbilt sat in the middle of it, and as I watched, it tilted slowly and punched through the ice without a sound, sliding into the black water. The CB crackled again. That same voice, clearer now. You shouldn't have stopped? Jacob, now it knows you. How did it know my name? I pushed the truck hard, going faster than you should ever drive on ice. The glow in my mirrors faded, but never quite disappeared. It followed me all the way to the far shore, staying just at the edge of my vision. When I reached solid ground, I didn't stop. I drove straight through to the next town, 70 miles without pause. At a truck stop, I finally pulled over and checked the logs and maps. There was no record of any other truck on the ice road that night. No other driver had called for help. I called the RCMP and told them about the Peterbilt. They searched the coordinates I gave them. The ice was solid and undisturbed. No hole, no truck, no tracks. They thought I'd suffered carbon monoxide poisoning or hypothermia-induced hallucinations. But I know what I saw. I never drove the ice road again. Some nights I still hear that singing sound in my dreams, and I wake up in a cold sweat. The worst part? Last month, I was at a truck stop in Thunder Bay and saw a memorial wall with photos of drivers who died on northern routes. One photo stopped me cold. A young guy, maybe 30, standing in front of a white Peterbilt. The caption read, "Missing, February 14th, 1987, last known position, Lake Winnipeg Ice Road." His eyes in that photo were looking directly at the camera, but something about them was wrong. They were too dark, too empty, and in the reflection of his truck's chrome behind him, you could see something else. Something tall and pale standing on the ice, watching him. The same thing I saw footprints from that night. I took the winter caretaker position at Whitetail Lodge because I needed isolation. My divorce was finalized in October, and I couldn't stand another night in our empty house. The job posting promised solitude 6 months. Alone in a luxury ski lodge in the Colorado Rockies, closed for the season. My only responsibilities were maintaining the property and making sure nothing froze or collapsed. Under the snow, the isolation sounded like paradise. My name's Daniel Cross, and I'm a photographer by trade. I figured the job would give me time to work on my portfolio while getting paid. The lodge owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Hartwick, met me in town before the first major storm hit. She gave me keys, instructions, and one strange warning. "Don't go into the east wing after dark," she said. "We keep it locked for a reason." I laughed it off. But she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength, her face deadly serious. "I mean it, people have died up there. Promise me." I promised. The lodge was massive 40 rooms spread across 3 floors, built from timber and stone in the 1920s. Most of it I kept locked and unheated to save propane. I lived in a small staff apartment on the ground floor, comfortable enough. The first few weeks passed peacefully. I photographed the winter landscape, read books, enjoyed the silence. Then the dreams started. I'd wake at exactly 3:17 a.m., my heart racing, certain I'd heard children laughing. Not the innocent laughter of play something sharper, crueler. I'd lie in bed listening, but the lodge remained silent except for the wind and settling timbers. On my 3rd week, I found the photographs. I was cataloging supplies in a storage room when I discovered a box of old pictures, dated from the 1930s and 40s. They showed the lodge during its heyday, wealthy families on vacation, children playing in the snow, formal dinners in the Great Hall. Normal vintage photos except for one detail that made my skin crawl. In every single photograph, there was a figure in the background, always partially hidden behind a doorway. At the edge of the frame, barely visible in a window's reflection, the same figure. Tall, impossibly thin, wearing what looked like dark clothing. In some photos, you could almost make out its face, it was always just blurry enough to avoid clear definition. But its eyes were clear. Too large, too round, too bright. I studied the photos obsessively. The figure appeared in pictures spanning decades, always watching the guests. In one particularly disturbing photo from 1945, a group of children built a snowman outside. The figure stood among them, and unlike every other image, it was in sharp focus. It wore the tattered remains of what might have been a ski instructor's uniform. Its arms were too long, hanging past its knees, and it was smiling at the camera. That night, the laughter came again. But this time, I wasn't dreaming. I sat up in bed, completely awake. The sound came from upstairs, from the east wing. Children giggling and whispering, and underneath, a deeper sound, something breathing heavily, moving through the halls. I grabbed my flashlight and a fire poker. Every instinct screamed at me to stay in my room, lock the door, wait for dawn. But the photographer in me, the part that always needs to see, pushed me forward. The east wing's entrance was chained shut. The chains lay on the floor, broken. The door stood open. I climbed the stairs. The temperature dropped with each step, my breath forming clouds. The children's laughter grew louder, echoing from multiple directions. At the top, a long hallway stretched into darkness. Rooms branched off on both sides, their doors open. I shone my light into the first room. It was a child's bedroom, preserved from decades past. Toys sat arranged on shelves, a bed made with rotting linens. And standing in the corner, facing away from me, was a child. A little girl in an old-fashioned dress, completely still. My light swept to the next room. Another child, a boy this time, also facing the corner. Every room had one. 12 children total, all standing motionless, facing into corners. None of them reacted to my light. At the end of the hall, the last door was closed. The breathing sound came from behind it, heavy and wet. The doorknob was turning slowly, something on the other side trying to open it. I ran. Behind me, the laughter turned to screaming. Not frightened screams, delighted ones like a game had begun. I heard doors slamming, small feet running, and underneath it all, that breathing getting closer. I made it to my apartment and barricaded the door. The sounds continued all night, children running through the halls, giggling, calling my name. They knew my name. How did they know my name? At dawn, everything stopped. I called Mrs. Hartwick. She answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. "You went into the East Wing?" she said. Not a question. I admitted I had. There was a long silence. "They were a private school group," she finally said. "Winter of 1952, their ski instructor took 30 children into the backcountry. Only he returned. They never found the children. He claimed something in the woods took them, wore their shapes, led them away. He hanged himself in that last room in the East Wing before the police could question him properly. But I saw the figure in photos from the 20s, I protested. Before 1952. Yes, she said quietly. It was there long before. And it's still there. It collects them. I'm sorry, Daniel. You shouldn't have broken your promise. Now it knows you've seen. I left that morning, abandoning my contract. Mrs. Hartwick said she understood. As I drove down the mountain, I looked back once. In a third-floor window of the East Wing, 12 small figures stood watching me leave. And behind them, tall and impossibly thin, stood the instructor. Even from that distance, I could see it was smiling. I still wake at 3:17 a.m., and sometimes, just sometimes, I hear children laughing outside my window. The distress beacon activated on January 12th at the remote Aurora Research Station in northern Alaska. I was part of the 4-person rescue team sent to investigate. We're specialists in extreme weather recovery. My name's Jennifer Walsh, and I've pulled people out of blizzards and avalanches from Antarctica to Greenland. But I'd never seen anything like Aurora Station. The facility housed a team of 8 scientists studying atmospheric phenomena and magnetic fields. They'd been conducting experiments on the aurora borealis, specifically strange signal patterns detected in the electromagnetic spectrum. Their last communication came 3 days before the beacon activated. A routine check-in, everything normal. We arrived by helicopter during a brief weather window. The station sat in a valley surrounded by mountains, a cluster of connected buildings painted safety orange against the white landscape. As we circled for landing, I noticed something odd. Every door stood open, despite the temperature being -35. Our team leader, Frank Reyes, voiced what we were all thinking: that's not good. We landed 50 yards from the main building. The wind had died completely, leaving an eerie stillness. Our boots crunched on ice as we approached. The place looked deserted, tracks in the snow long since filled by wind. The main entrance door hung at an angle, torn partly from its hinges. Not broken by wind torn from the inside, the metal bent outward. Frank motioned us forward cautiously. The interior was worse. The station looked like a tornado had gone through it. Furniture overturned, papers scattered, equipment smashed. And blood. Not pools of it, but spray patterns on the walls and ceiling. The kind of pattern you see when something happens very fast and very violent. But no bodies. We split up, searching the connected buildings. I paired with Travis Kim, our medic. The lab wing was our target. As we moved through the facility, I noticed the damage wasn't random. It was focused around doorways and windows, like something had been trying to get in. Or out. The lab was pristine. Unlike the chaos elsewhere, everything here sat in perfect order. Computer monitors glowed with active data streams. Coffee cups sat on desks, contents frozen solid. and on the main screen, a video was paused mid-frame. Travis hit play. A woman's face filled the screen. Middle-aged, exhausted, Dr. Rachel Cohn, according to the nameplate on her desk. She spoke in a whisper. Day 17 of the enhanced monitoring experiment. We've made a breakthrough. The signals aren't random. They're responsive. When we broadcast specific frequencies, the aurora, it answers. It changes. We've been trying to establish a pattern, a language. Tonight, something answered back. She glanced over her shoulder nervously. It came through during the peak activity. A shape in the lights. I know how that sounds. But all 8 of us saw it. Something massive, moving through the aurora like a swimmer through water. It was aware of us. I know it was. It looked down at the station and then it began to descend. She leaned closer to the camera. If you're watching this, don't repeat our experiment. Don't broadcast into the aurora. It's not empty up there. There are things living in the lights, and they can come down if you give them a door. We opened a door and something came through. The video ended. Travis and I stared at each other. My radio crackled Frank's voice, tense. You need to see this, outside now. We found the others near the generator building. Frank pointed at the ground. In the snow, perfectly preserved, were tracks. Huge, far too large to be human. They started at the center of the compound and led away in 8 different directions, like something had split apart. But that wasn't the worst part. Each track was accompanied by smaller human footprints walking alongside them. Not dragged. Walking willingly. The tracks were fresh. Hours old at most. That's when we heard the humming. It came from everywhere at once, a low vibration that I felt in my bones. Above us, the sky began to change. The aurora borealis appeared despite it being midday. Impossible green and purple curtains of light rippled across the sky, growing brighter, lower, and in the light's shapes moved. Vast, serpentine forms that slithered through the aurora like eels. They spiraled downward, coming closer. As they descended, the air itself seemed to thicken, becoming harder to breathe. The temperature plummeted even further. Frost formed on my goggles instantly. "Back to the helicopter!" Frank shouted, "Now!" We ran. Behind us, the humming grew deafening. I glanced back once and wished I hadn't. The shapes were reaching. Down from the aurora, extending appendages of light and something else, something that bent reality around it. Where they touched the ground, the snow didn't melt, it transformed, turning crystalline and wrong, growing upward in geometric patterns. One of the shapes moved faster than the others, cutting us off from the helicopter. It descended like a curtain, spreading across our path. Through the aurora's light, I could see something inside it, a suggestion of form too many limbs, too many angles, eyes that weren't really eyes but felt like them. And faces. Human faces pressed against the inside of the aurora membrane, like people trapped under ice. Their mouths opened and closed silently. I recognized Dr. Cohn's face among them. Frank fired his flare gun directly into the thing. The flare passed through it without effect. The shape pulsed, and suddenly Frank was on the ground, convulsing. Travis grabbed him, trying to help, but Frank's eyes had rolled back. His mouth moved, voice not his own. "We understand you now. We've been learning. Your thoughts taste like starlight. Join us. The cold is beautiful. Everything is beautiful up here in the lights." I yanked Travis away. We dragged Frank between us, running perpendicular to the helicopter toward the mountains. The aurora followed, but it moved slowly, deliberately, playing with us. We found a crevasse in the rocks and dove inside. The aurora couldn't reach us there, blocked by stone. We huddled together as Frank slowly came back to himself, gasping and crying. We stayed in that hole for 6 hours until the aurora faded. When we emerged, the station was gone. Not destroyed, transformed. The buildings had become crystalline structures that shouldn't exist, all angles and impossible geometries. They hummed with the same frequency we'd heard in the aurora. We made it to the helicopter and got out. The official report listed Aurora Station as lost to a combination of structural failure and extreme weather. The project was shut down. All research into broadcasting. Signals toward the aurora was classified and discontinued. But I know the truth. We opened something. We invited them to look at us, and they did. And they liked what they saw. Sometimes at night I see green lights at the edge of my vision. I feel that humming in my bones. And I know they're still watching, still waiting, hoping we'll open that door again. Hoping we'll join the others, swimming forever in the beautiful, terrible lights.